Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the October 11, 2016 regular meeting of the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the Secretary please read the roll?
Director Andrews?
Present.
Director Lucene?
Present.
Vice President Mason?
Present.
Director Mitchell?
Present.
President Winta?
Present.
Student Representative Carrillo?
Present.
Student Representative Parikh?
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're now at section 4.0, the adoption of the agenda. Our first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Cohn, will you please introduce that item for this evening?
I would be happy to do so. Consistent with the plans established at your 2016 Summer Planning Workshop, tonight's agenda contains several elements related to both the district's strategic plan and the board's annual goals. There's a segment this evening for routine business. There is an embedded recognition item, which means it's not separately called out in the recognition category. There is a segment for strategic progress reporting, which is the main item on tonight's agenda. There's a segment for new business, one for upcoming agenda items, and one for board comments. Since publishing the agenda, the following items have been updated. 7.2, approval of the personnel report, and a revised personnel report was uploaded. And item 8.1, the superintendent's report, will be updated during the meeting as is customary for your regular meetings. The board may elect to change the order of business by a majority vote of the members. In all other respects, the agenda is as it was presented to you. I will, before I ask your approval of it, ask that we add one additional item of new business to be numbered 13.2. I'm going to ask you to waive your attorney-client privilege on a report that was delivered as a result of an investigation conducted over the past several weeks, and I'll explain all that to you when we get there.
So will that be adopting the agenda as amended?
Fair enough.
Yeah, okay, great. So is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Then I'll second.
It's been moved by Director Mason and seconded by Director Mitchell to adopt the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? Hearing no, we will proceed to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. We're now at section 5.0. We don't have any formal recognition scheduled for this evening, correct? All right. We will move to section 6.0, the public comments. The school board specifically sets aside 2 times during the regular board meetings to hear from our constituents. We do this because we value public input and want to hear and understand the perspectives that each of you bring to the table. Dr. Cohn, are there any requests for comments during this first public comment agenda?
There are none.
All right. And we will move swiftly along to section 7.0, the consent agenda. Dr. Cohn, would you please provide an introduction for that agenda item as well?
Yes, I would be happy to. The board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items. These typically include minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, and recurring contracts. Sometimes the consent agenda will include items that occur less frequently, but are of a routine business nature. The less frequently occurring consent agenda items are usually reviewed by the board in its Friday report, 1 or more weeks before the board meeting when those items are scheduled to appear on that consent agenda. This gives directors time to ask staff questions about those items or to consider having a broader discussion about the policy implications of a particular item. If the consent agenda items are removed, if any consent agenda items are removed by the concurrence of 2 directors, we automatically renumber the remaining items and the board takes a final vote on the consent agenda with a single motion, no discussion. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office received 1 inquiry regarding some from Director Andrews regarding some of the expenditures. And the question was about a KCDA expense, an Alcatel-Lucent expense, and a Quilceda paving and construction expense. They were for $174, $193, and $60,000 respectively, and we provided a response to Director Andrews regarding respectively the capital fund purchase of playground equipment at Hawthorne and Lowell, the contract for maintenance at Alcatel-Lucent Enterprises, and maintenance costs for repaving and striping the damaged portion of a parking lot at Hawthorne Elementary. That was the third item. In all respects, the consent agenda is as it was originally published, and we ask your approval thereof.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cohn. A motion to adopt the consent agenda is in order.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Director Lassane and seconded by Director Mitchell to approve the consent agenda. Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in the new business section of the agenda? Hearing no requests, we will proceed to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. We're now at Section 8.0, Superintendent Report. Dr. Cohn.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Tonight we've got some agenda highlights, a little bit of good news for you, a few updates, and a report on last month's school and community visits, and a quick look at what's ahead. Tonight the header picture is of Cascade High School's Environmental Arts Club. They are in this photograph completing the harvest of Ozette potatoes from their raised beds. I understand this was on Monday. The crop will feed students at breakfast, and the rest of the bounty will be donated to the food bank. And the potato crop is one of a piece of a developing agriculture system, which includes a greenhouse that was rescued from blackberry vines a few years ago and now houses an aquaponics ecosystem complete with crops, and soon I understand fish and sweetwater shrimp. Now the shrimp are definitely going to be an attraction for me. So I'm delighted to be able to share with you that particular picture. And then I want to go into some agenda highlights. Tonight on your consent agenda, several things I think stand out with respect to the work of the district. One is your annual approval of the State Transitional Bilingual Program grant. That grant supports our English language learner program. As you know from recent reports, we have a large number and a growing number of English language learners in the district. As of October 4, we hit 2,523, which is an increase of 176 students compared to October last year. And this is 523 students more than we recorded in 2013, October. I think you probably are aware that most of this grant is staff costs, and it covers a portion of ELL teachers, ELL facilitators, coaches, paraeducators, and provides for professional development in areas such as the GLAD program, which you've seen demonstrated at a number of schools. Another item on tonight's agenda, which is particularly critical to us, is your first look at the current draft of the Integrated Tech Plan, which is made possible by the approval of our voters of both the capital levy and the capital bond last April. We're going to provide a draft for you. We're going to provide a lot of details, expense patterns, and we're going to get your feedback on what you lean toward with respect to future years budgeting, so that we can start thinking along those lines. It is not a decision-making item. It is an information item, and we will continue to work on this plan and the implementation of the plan, of course, over this year and subsequent years. Tonight also included in your consent agenda was approval of resolution for the issuance of our first of three portions of the bonds that were approved by the voters in 2016, this last April. This is allowing us to move forward to address enrollment growth in the district. It will support the remodel of North and Woodside and develop the new elementary school. And it's while important, a relatively technical step. You have approved bonds on a number of occasions, and typically we spend some time talking about refunding. This is not refunding. It's one of the steps of approving of bonds, which both you and the voters have already said are very, very important to us. So we'll proceed to sell about $50 million of those bonds to get these projects well underway. Wanted to show you a picture of some students playing at a previous concert. I'm looking for the credit on this photograph. I want you to know it was taken by the superintendent over the heads of some very happy parents. But really what I wanted you to know is that we've got a number of students enrolled in elementary schools at in the South Region. Silver Firs on Mondays and Wednesdays serving Forest View, Silver Firs and Penny Creek. Mill Creek on Tuesdays and Thursdays serving Mill Creek and Cedarwood. Woodside on Wednesdays and Thursdays serving Woodside kids. Essentially, in order to have a substantive, sustainable, quality orchestra in the district, you've got to have strings programs that start in elementary schools. And we wanted you to know that we have robust enrollment at the elementary level this year, going into our new year and our re-implementation. Remember, we had it before, like about 30 or 40 years ago, re-implementation of an orchestra program in the district. Tonight, I believe, is the first of 3 high school and beyond events at our high schools. I think you're all fairly familiar with it. I won't spend a great deal of time on that one tonight, but I want you to note that tonight the high school beyond event is at Cascade High, and then tomorrow night, the 19th, it is at Everett High School. Thursday night, it is at Jackson High School.
It was next week.
Sorry, next week, not this week. Am I correct? Next week. Joyce? Next week, not this week?
I'm going to say yes because the foundation.
Okay, great. So I should have the dates on here, actually. I'm so excited, I can hardly wait for them to be started. To get started. So anyway, we want to make sure that you've got those on your calendar and that you get a chance to attend one or more of those. They just continue to grow in popularity. Want to thank our Everett Rotary Club members for an ice cream social that was aimed at supporting the AVID program. We held it here at the Community Resource Center on September 28th. It was one of a number of opportunities that the Rotary Club is taking to announce a series of centennial grants. The Rotary Club is 100 years old, and the Rotary announced a $100,000 grant program to support college-bound students in the district's AVID program, and this is a wonderful opportunity for kids. It's going to involve sending students to college campuses, of course the Rotary and other folks too, but the Rotary provides career speakers during the year and grants to enhance the AVID classrooms. It also marks the implementation of a HOPE mentoring program, which will connect college students with those of our students who are college-bound through this program, and provides a variety of supports for our kids. Absolutely wonderful program that the Rotary started some time ago, and I'd note that Director Wynn has been very much involved in the committee that designed, planned, got approved, and has been administering that program for the Everett Rotary. This wasn't this weekend, was it? It was previous weekend, I think it was, that we had the Washington Family Engagement Conference. Ted and I welcomed folks along with the First Lady. This was a very powerful event that brings educators, parents, community members together to discuss family engagement strategies to support and expand family involvement and connections with schools and districts. I think there were about 225 or so people this year, up about 50 from the prior year. 52 of our staff attended, and staff representing 16 other school districts in our area also attended. And I want to thank all the folks here who helped pull that together. You have been hearing all kinds of news about creepy clowns, I think, and we wanted to make sure that you were aware that we've been sending some messages to parents, and we're not talking about happy clowns. This is not JP Patches and Gertrude. This is creepy clowns, and they're not very much fun, and quite frankly, they're scaring the dickens out of adults and kids alike. We'll continue to be vigilant, frankly, in speaking with representatives of the Everett Police Department, Mill Creek Police Department, Sheriff's Office. I think most folks recognize that a lot of the social media traffic that we're seeing it amounts to a hoax or a lot of hoaxes, and kids doing some stuff that they frankly ought not be doing. But there are a number of cases of people dressed up in these scary clown outfits attacking people and committing crimes and using this clown business as a cover. So in Everett Public Schools, we're not clown friendly. We're not creepy clown friendly, and we want to make sure everybody knows that. And I don't know what happened to my PowerPoint, but I had a great not symbol that went over the creepy clown face, but it's not working. So just imagine that it was there. A little bit of good news. By the way, before I leave that topic, I want to thank especially Sergeant Tim Reeves, who's our School Resource Officer Coordinator for the Everett Police Department. Tim's done a magnificent job coordinating all of our responses to this type of event, and we're grateful for both your service and your support, Tim. Thank you so much. Everett Public Schools was recognized again as a best-in-class school district for its United Way campaign. Our United Way campaign this year kicks off. Last year we raised about $125,000, and we hope to involve more and more staff and provide more resources over time to this program, because it impacts so many of our kids in that 2 of 5 of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch and are impacted heavily by poverty. We had a interesting event this past month where someone took a shot at somebody north of one of our campuses, and one of the escaping parties ran across campus. We ended up locking down the campus at a time we have not done this before. We typically practice with kids on campus. That's when the biggest worries are. We've not had practices that involve kids in transit to the campus or kids in transit away from the campus. So we're thinking our practice activities a little bit as well. But I want to thank all of the staff in the district that helped out with this. This event impacted 22 of our buses and hundreds of kids in 12 schools. You know how tightly strung our transportation system is. So when you interrupt a number of routes like this and you shelter kids in place, in this case it was at Memorial, it affects a lot of other routes and pickups, and a lot of staff got involved in making sure parents were aware as fast as we thought we could, and it turns out we could do it a little faster, and indeed multiple debrief sessions following that showed us a number of things that we could improve. The only one that was picked up by news media was the speed with which we got the first announcement out to folks. But in fact, as we thought through all of this with the Sheriff's Department and Everett Police Department and some other folks, we found a number of things that we could do to improve. And every single time we run through practice or we have an actual event, we learn some things that we can improve upon, and that's part of the nature and culture of the district as well. So another thank you to all the staff involved and our police department as well. This week, technology training for our staff began. We're embarking on a very large training series, as I think you know, and you'll hear some more about that this evening. Jeff Utek of Eduro was here with us. I think you've all either received or observed some of that training. In fact, Jeff spoke to Rotary as well to help some of our community members understand the significant impact on that a one-to-one environment has on instruction. And teachers were doing everything today from using Google Maps to create and collaborate on instructional materials to engaging in some thinking about how their classrooms will change over time. You'll be hearing more about this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. School visits during this past month included these elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. As you could tell from the previous report, which was over the summer, I'm involved in a lot more and will be involved in a lot more school visits from here through the end of the year. We certainly engaged in a lot of community visits as well. I'd note that the Rotary clubs have been very receptive. In fact, 2 of the Rotary clubs have approved donations to the Music for Life program, which will deliver students instruments that have been donated and then refurbished by the Music for Life folks. And both the Milk Creek and the Everett Rotary Club have approved that program, and we're going to go thank and collect the donation from Milk Creek this week. A lot of involvement with Snohomish County in a variety of ways. We met with Snohomish County Executive in addition to some issues in the district. We've had some meetings with our sheriff's captain in the area and lieutenants and sergeants working on both security and planning for the future. And very much looking forward to the continuing work with them. You can see a lot of United Way activities. We were very much involved, a number of us, in the search for a new executive, and that executive was announced this week by the Daily Herald. And then you can see that there are a number of Washington State University, YMCA, and state board leadership opportunities that I've been involved in. You have a regular school board meeting coming up again. I'm sorry, you have a special meeting coming up the 18th, which is at one of our elementary schools on early learning. I'll correct this slide set to reflect that. You've got a regular board meeting the 25th. Of course, election day is November 8. A regular school board meeting is November 8. And the WASDA conference is coming up the 17th to the 20th. Then your regular school board meeting is later in the month. So that's my report. Thank you all very, very much.
Meeting on the 1st as well. We have a special meeting November 1st as well.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Cohn. We're now at section 9.0, the strategic monitoring report. This is going to be our integrated technology plan. We've set aside 40 minutes for presentation and 20 minutes for a question and answer. And I have to tell you, I think we're all very excited to see where this conversation goes. So we're looking forward to it. And Brian, we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Well, good afternoon. It is my pleasure and honor to be here today to be able to share a review of the integrated technology plan. Before I begin, I'd just like to share that a few weeks ago when you welcomed me to the district as the new Chief Information Officer, I talked about how excited I was to get started in the work, how honored I was to be able to come back to the district in this capacity. And in the last few weeks, it has been overwhelming, the work with the department and the experts that we have. We are very lucky in Everett to have such amazing people, and many of them are with us here this evening in the audience because they feel so passionate about this plan and about what we're about to undertake. And we're excited today to share sort of where we're at and sort of next steps. And so I am spending a lot of time catching up because this is work that has been taking place and you've been involved in much longer than I. And so joining me tonight to do the update is going to be three of the department leaders. We're going to have Joanne Budewig, who's the Director of Learning Management Services, share some information. Ken Twain, who's the Director of Information Network Systems, he's going to also share some information and updates. And Scott Jenkins, who's the Director of Customer and Technology Services, he is going to share a little bit of the celebrations and recognition of our deployment. So very excited and honored to be able to be with you here this evening and share sort of where we're at. So the objectives for the presentation are really outlined there for you to review the progress of the plan and where we are at in the development stage, to share the additional goal area based on the last briefing we had with the board. There was an addition of a goal, and we've had some time to work with our advisory council. I want to share the updates of that. Share information with you on the finalization of the plan. The integrated technology plan, you would have noticed in your document, still is in draft form. So we want to share the update about how we're looking at finalizing that and the timeline for the implementation of the plan. We specifically want to spend some time today outlining the plans for year one, which we are currently in. And Dr. Cohn shared some of the exciting training and professional development already underway, and it's part of our celebrations too about the deployment and the training that has already taken place. And then lastly, after we have a time for question and answer, there'll be the time we like to set aside to recognize those that have been so closely involved and celebrate their efforts to this point. So with the alignment to the strategic goals, this plan, there's a lot there because it's really a focus about enriching instruction through technology and promoting technology use for greater innovation throughout the organization. So it really touches on a lot of components of our strategic plan. You see them listed there, which is very exciting, and part of the title of Integrated Technology Plan really reflects that some of the important keywords that are reflected in the technology plan that are also part of the strategic goals of equitable access, creativity, innovation, collaboration, engaging families and stakeholders, students and staff working together. Those are all reflected in the plan and also part of our strategic plan. The why of an integrated tech plan is really where we begin. It's about improving instruction for students. It's about building capacity and knowledge of teachers. It extends throughout utilization throughout our organization and throughout the district to improve efficiency and effectiveness, which is also a key component of the plan. It's about how we're going to work systemically to improve all the facets of our organization, and you'll see components of that throughout the plan through the use of technology. Our district operations, leveraging technology to support innovation, but also equipping our classroom so that our teachers are preparing our students to achieve college and career readiness. So that is the why behind the term integrated, about really improving the whole organization as well as the capacity of teachers and the ability of students being college and career ready. The plan's foundation is in the National Education Technology Plan. It's a focus on transforming learning and the organization's utilization of technology. Our plan in Everett includes the advice of national thought leaders, successful districts. We did a lot of site visits. We continue to reach out to districts that have done one-to-one implementation and integrated technology plans to get their advice and their input, along with extensive research that we continue to do. Bruce Dixon of the Anywhere, Anytime Learning Foundation said in one of our trainings that this is a big deal. It will fundamentally change how you will do business from this point forward. And we heard that with our training with the teachers, that it will be different in not only how teachers teach, but how students learn. And so it's exciting work, and it's something that is going to impact our entire organization in a real positive way. The plan and the support of the one-to-one initiative creates equity and access for our students. It is more than just having a device, as you're going to hear in a moment. There is professional development for teachers to know how to fully utilize these devices, and we have already started work on that, and Joanne's going to share some more specifics in some of her slides. The Office of Educational Technology brings this message all together, and a lot of our founding work was working with them. And we put together a couple of clips that we'd like to share with some highlights of what we felt was key components of what we looked at in framing our work with the Integrated Technology Plan. This is also a group that we recently joined with, the Office for the Future Ready Framework, which is a group of districts from across the nation that are looking at how to support personalized digital learning. And so a lot of what you see here is when these people are getting together at different summits from across the country, some of what they're working on together. So we thought we'd share some highlights, and we'll continue to share more information about Future Ready. There's a summit here in a few weeks in Seattle, and when we come back and brief you more, we'll share some highlights from that work. So
you all know very well that the future of our public education system is going to look interactive, it's going to look individualized, it is going to be full of real-world experiences. Our charge here has really been to try to do more to equip our educational leadership, our classroom teachers, our principals with the high-speed broadband and the digital tools that they need to really unleash that opportunity.
When considering a transition to technology to support learning, right, to digital learning environment and ecosystem, there's lots of different pieces that need to be considered. It's more than just the device, although that's an important piece. It's also making sure that there's access, connectivity in places where students learn, not just a computer lab down the hall. We take students out of the environment where they're doing the learning and walk them down to a special room where they can connect to the internet, and then walk them out and erase all the work they just did so they can go back to their learning. That sort of approach doesn't work for 21st century learners. We need to have access to wherever the students are, wherever they're learning.
I visited and worked with a school in North Dakota, and this was in the middle of nowhere. It was an hour from the closest hotel, one of the reservation schools, and their entire community had Wi-Fi, high-speed broadband Wi-Fi that was broadcast to the entire community. You know, that school district and that school and that community in the middle of nowhere in North Dakota, if they can provide that, there's definitely the means and the way and the capacity if we want to put our mind to it.
The upkeep and upgrading of technologies is really critical, but I think the absolute challenge that we faced as superintendents and that we promote in our roles at the Department of Education is to ensure that we are really advocating for professional learning for all teachers, for all adults in the building.
The last thing I would mention, there's also a piece about digital learning that really requires us to focus on the issue of equity. We can't get to digital learning and provide access and opportunity for all students unless all means all. Every student, every school, every classroom, every place in America. And then and only then will we have opportunities where young people's capacity to build and create and to discover really is limitless.
Thanks for taking time from your districts and from all the work that you're doing in your communities to be part of this important conversation.
We have a fantastic opportunity in this country to transform learning through technology. The transformation happens when school leaders, when district leaders, when teachers, when principals become engaged and involved and start to rethink what learning looks and feels like when it's supported and powered by technology.
We can all learn from one another as we go through this transformation in education. And it's exciting to hear how different districts are farther along in certain areas, and to learn from their experiences, I think, will help to accelerate our own progress.
As we're looking at our operating budget, we're looking at how to redirect funds.
So we need to ramp up our efforts collectively as superintendents and as school districts for our kids.
And I can't say enough that leaders matter, and they matter a whole lot. And your modeling of the use of technology is really vital to whatever goes on in your school district with technology. I think it's always important to bring the leaders of school districts together, first of all, to establish networks so that they're able to interact with one another and forge some partnerships in the future, whether it's just through phone calls or a digital connection. They're able to reach out to one another to solve problems, but most importantly, to really share leadership initiatives that move their districts forward so that all students can attain achievement at a really high level.
There's so many different modalities on how we can teach students and how they can learn. We need to be open to those.
We want to make sure we take advantage of every second that we have with you here.
That's why I'm so excited to have the chance to talk with superintendents, to hear from them, to hear what their challenges and what their needs are, and to have a chance to encourage their thinking and learn how they are rethinking and reimagining learning, not just digitizing traditional practice.
So I ask you again to imagine a world in the next 10 years where digital learning really becomes the way that we teach and we lead our young people. Thank you.
So we thought this was a great capture of sort of the work that we've, the road we've been on, the road you've been on. This plan didn't just happen. It took a lot of effort and energy, but really the strategic plan started the way. and that strategic foundation on instruction and our mission with our students, technology is playing into that goal. And so we used Office of Education, but we also used several of the leading agencies out there, the Foundation of Project Red, the Intel Education Work, Anywhere, Anytime Learning Foundation. We've looked to the experts in the different industries. We've followed along the lines of SAMR, and Jeff Utek has been our vehicle with that model. We've sought our other districts out, our local districts, national districts. We've sought our community's opinion out. We've sought our students' opinion out. We've had the dialogue back and forth about the prioritizing, and that has all led to the development of our current draft of our plan. And the idea of your work and the leadership's work and the students' and community's work coming to fruition. So it's a very exciting time to get to the place where the plan is starting to take root and the steps are being taken. Starting today, I've spent the last 2 days in with Jeff Utek and our high school teachers at this point, and really powerful, the model of transformed learning, because it is a journey. And Jeff was really good about helping our teachers see a path to, okay, what's my first step? What's my next step? And to understand the importance for our students, I didn't see any disengaged person in that room, and everyone thinking and considering, and all of the dialogue is how do we move from, first step is, when can I use a digital tool instead of paper? When could I use a digital tool instead of, and that substitution idea? And the next step of, when is it that I can use a digital tool that will add on to what paper could have done? Just even commenting in Google Docs by peers on an assignment. When am I augmenting? Or when am I modifying? When am I really changing this task because the technology allows me to do that? And redefining, when is it that the technology spirals us into a whole new space that couldn't be there before? And I mean space, like tweeting NASA or having a face-to-face with an astronaut on a mission and being part of that conversation. And he's done a lovely job of helping them see the steps. Where is something you're doing and where could it deepen? And why is each step an important part of that? And so SAMR's been a very powerful step to, when are we enhancing? How do we start enhancing? But how do we then move into that transformation space? And how do we start today? That was my favorite comment from the last 2 days is, I can do this tomorrow with how I'm teaching, let alone whether students have computers or not. And that's been very exciting to listen, just after 1 day in the training. As we look ahead, we talk about it takes a village. We have a lot of people who've been involved, and there are groups on here. We actually didn't even have all the names. But the idea that this is not being created in isolation, and it continues to be brought forward and into public venues to receive comments, to improve, and to put our best thinking forward.
So as a brief reminder, the plan is organized in a number of goals. Each of those goals have strategies, and each of those strategies then have KPIs that will demonstrate progress or not. And then we also identify in the plan who it is that's responsible for accomplishing each goal. When we met with you last, I believe it was March, we introduced the 5 goals. We talked about leadership, teaching, learning, assessment, and infrastructure. The feedback we got from the board was, well, we needed to add another important goal, and that would be some kind of outreach and a communication goal with our community. So this is the current draft of that particular goal. Now, in order to develop and get some that goal, we went to our TAC and we sat down with them, and they were very excited about having the opportunity to talk to us about what makes sense for an outreach goal related to our technology plan. What should we do, or what should we consider? What questions should we be asking? And they focused right on that off the bat and saying, let's make sure we talk about what the schools are doing. The district itself, great, but what are the schools doing in terms of being successful with the kind of initiatives that we're rolling out? They wanted to make sure that our teachers and our school personnel also understood the idea of outreach, that they're also making positive comments and sharing the successes we're having in the schools. They also noted that it's important that we realize or understand specifically what it is we want in terms of feedback. Let's make sure we have a good idea of the type of information we want back so we can actually have some action as a result of that. And finally, they asked that from a logic perspective, they asked us to reorder the strategies within each goal so we could show a progression going through that particular plan. The idea of adding the goal is a good example of this. This is a dynamic, a living plan. As technology changes, as our needs change throughout this plan, we're going to be able to go back and make adjustments and keep everybody apprised of those adjustments, but we don't want to make this a static, a stale goal. We want to make sure that we're taking advantage of everything that's happened in the industry, both in learning and in the technology. So this is what we've got. Our current draft, again, has now 6 goals. We've gone ahead and inserted the goal 5, communication and outreach, above the infrastructure, just as an indication that we believe the infrastructure is the foundation of this entire effort.
So we've begun, and how we've begun in each goal area is the work of this year. And so in each of these, we've outlined new policies and procedures that are tied to data security, that are tied to moving into a more digital web-based curriculum. And those are in our starting phases as we're educating our staffs about what that means, about as we become more mobile, our responsibilities to make sure we're providing the best resources and keeping our students and staff data secure. And so that's been a mission we've already started in as we're doing our device rollout training. We're also working with the EEA and bringing that into our training sessions to make sure it's not just a publication that they're receiving, but actual ability to ask questions and to hear about the intent behind the policies and procedures. We're looking towards next year when there's devices for students, what the implications for our student handbook and procedures for our parents are. We're looking at the importance of our service, our ability to serve and respond to our staff. We've implemented a new product called ServiceNow, and we've broadened the use of that technology. We're utilizing it in the Learning Management Services department as well. So we can find out what are the training requests they're asking for, what are the curriculum tools they need support in, as well as what are the infrastructure needs they have, what are the actual device needs they have, or the resources in their classroom. And so it's giving us a great view into where their needs are rather than sort of an email system and a phone call system. So it's allowing us to track better. And we are looking forward to this spring being able to post for our first instructional technology facilitators to work with our first implementing schools. In the area of teaching, we're very excited about the work with the SAMR model and working with Jeff Utek and having our staffs start to kick off our elementary schools. 3 will start next week. So we're working throughout. We're also leveraging that training throughout all of our professional development as we continue and follow up between the 4 sessions with Jeff Utek. We're looking at how we can provide more professional development resources. We've been able to really leverage our atomic learning, which is also something we can provide our community and our students, but we're actually able to build our own courses in there as well. So we've begun that to build our initial use for just in time. I need a 5-minute video on. So we're leveraging that type of atmosphere as well. We are continuing to look at wireless projection so we can give our staff more freedom and ability. We're trying to make sure it's proven, though, because there's nothing more frustrating than try to project and it's not working. So that's one of the research projects we have on what is the best device that will work in a heavily Wi-Fi'd area. You can find one that works one-off, but how does it work within the room? The idea of a course management system so that all these tools can have a container for the teacher to work from. That's part of our selection process this year. So when we start with the high schools, we'll be able to start with the implementation of course management. And I'm very excited, Learning Management Services is coordinating our librarians. And we together with a leadership team are looking at mapping out our digital citizenship and the librarians taking lead on that in each of our schools. Also, when we talk about the areas of learning, our Office 365 environment, our professional development for staff, ongoing in that, and we'll be looking to launch that option for students throughout the course of this fall. We're looking at the idea of launching student emails and setting up the infrastructure to move ahead with that initiative. We're expanding our digital intervention options, trying some different products that are digital, that support just-in-time, again, leverage personalized learning for our most in-need populations. We're also looking at assessment. We're excited we're going to start a performance assessment tasks digital platform called Define STEM. We're looking into that. Communication and outreach, we're looking at the notion about all our options for Wi-Fi off campus, whether it's a subscription, whether it's a device, and whether or not we need to have a variety of options there. We're into that work. We're in the process of designing what that staff, community, and student feedback loop might look like. So that's on our radar to make that important, and the TAC is serving as a great guiding force for us in considering how to outreach to our community. In addition, we're looking at, this is a year of student computer lab upgrades. Some of those are going mobile already, and whether or not a traditional room serves a school or having more mobility is more of an option at this point. We're looking at, we will be running a process to find out what is the best student device. The market changes 6 months later. It's a whole different ballgame. So we'll be looking to formalize that pursuit of the best option. And Wi-Fi and network upgrades, the first dollars in will go right to the schools that are going to get the devices in the fall to make sure that they're up and running at all times. As well as we have some operational improvements. There's advancements in both our Business Plus and eSchool Plus upgrades.
So it's quite an initial phase, lots of amazing things already underway. And as Dr. Cohn mentioned at the beginning, we are so fortunate to have had levy and bond support from our voters to help fund this work. And so there's 3 pages, and I'll just point out some highlights, and then at the end during question and answer, if you have any specific questions, we can address those. This outlines, the first 2 pages outline first of all, the end of the 2010 levy. You can see that in the left column in the different color in blue. And that is, the first 2 pages are the use of our levy and capital money to fund the integrated tech plan from 2016 to 2022. And you can see some of our estimations over time and our projections for how we would allocate those funds and use the voter approved bond and levy totals. Then on page 3 is it's colored differently because page 3 is the expenditures that would impact general fund. The top portion, I'll just point out, is what we already do. That already has an impact in general fund. That is the sort of the current structure. And the bottom is what I'll just point out, and I'll have Joanne come up and talk in a minute about specifically the facilitators. But I'll just kind of point out, in looking at that bottom portion, we looked at, first of all, what would be our priority in terms of levels of support. Support options is what we called it. I will also point out, I didn't mention it at the beginning, that the word draft is at the top of this in all these documents, and there's a revision date because we tried to estimate how many times we have revised this document, even since I've been here in the last month. I can't imagine how many times they did previous to me. So we've just decided that we'll continue to put the last revision date at the top to kind of give you an idea. Because we understand that it is a large organization. There are a lot of other demands and other programs. It's hard to predict what the future is going to hold with the legislature and different things. And so we understand that this is our thought and our levels of support. And so you can kind of see from A through D the different possible levels. Notice the constant in our thought is that from feedback and from the research that we had done with what would be the on-site field tech help desk support. So those are reflected in all 4 of those levels so that we can make sure that the devices are working and that the teachers have the ability to connect to the internet and get that on-site support. In the first year, in 2017-18, that's embedded in being able to use capital money for that. So that's why that column is blank. So that was our thought about what stays constant in the different levels of support. What we thought we could be creative in terms of looking at it differently was the facilitator piece. And so I'll just have Joanne mention how that looks different at all 4 levels might answer some of your questions on the front end.
So our ideal would be to go with what we know about strong professional development. And one is, there's no doubt our collaboration time is paramount. That no matter the model, if that's our constant, then our teachers have a way to learn together, learn from each other, and be able to leverage other resources. Our principal leadership, our librarian leadership, and others. So we feel even in the level D that we have professional development a strong foundation. As we move up the levels, what we're moving up is a dedicated person who could be in the classroom more often modeling and more consistent. And so depending on, our resources, our ability to allocate out of general fund, then we are able to provide more and more support. So the idea of a regional lead, so each of the areas would have a lead to coordinate those on-site staffs, to work with principals, to be able to design resources, design materials, and that allows a level lead, like an element. It could be regional, or it could be level, elementary, middle, and high, or it could allow us that idea of north-south and central regions. The second plan puts 6 in place, which allows us to maybe put our elementaries at a smaller ratio instead of 1:18 at the time. Then it would at least allow some more support at the multiple schools, and so we could assign one per 6, which is actually one of our models in the beginning, was the elementary to be supported, and then would allow a middle and a high school to coordinate with their staffs. And when you get to level A, the idea is that each of our secondary schools with the size of their population would have on-site job-embedded coaching, someone who is capable of being in the room, someone who is able to work with the LIFT teams in a more direct, consistent. And that's the idea behind the frequency of the ability to provide the instruction and support to the staff. And so those are the variations in our models, and we have methods and ways to coordinate each one of those and leverage the resources that we have to make them work. On the foundation of our collaborative teams, all of these build from that.
So when the puzzle is completed, when the full implementation of our integrated technology plan is realized, our students are going to be able to demonstrate that they are well-rounded, they're healthy, flexible, global perspectives, who can access resources and collaborate. I'll mention again that the training that we've been receiving as teachers as we prepare for implementation is giving teachers the tools of how students can access those resources and ask questions differently, because they have got technology at their fingertips, so that when they graduate from Everett Public Schools, they are that idea of digital culture permeates our organization, and they can better know how to access the information in 21st century skills. So that's our vision of what it would look like when the puzzle is completed. So in summary, we spent some time just sort of reviewing the integrated tech plan and its development, reviewing the addition of the goal based on your feedback, outline what has taken place already and what our plan is for initial phase. And when we finish with the Q&A, we're going to have a little bit of time for celebration. So we haven't done that part yet, but we will once we have a chance to answer any questions that you might have. And so I'll have the team just come up and join me so we can answer your questions in unison. They were excited about this portion.
Well, and we're excited overall. This is a big deal, and I think there needs to be a recognition that anytime you take on a major initiative like this, there is some messiness to it, and it's not 100% baked. I mean, there's some things that are going to have to be kind of learned through trial and error. So with that, directors or student representatives, do we have any questions for them?
I have a couple of questions. First off, great job. And I have to tell you something personal that happened to me today. Working with one of my physicians, he said, Tracy, this form needs a password, and it's a Word document. And I said, oh, let me fix that. I copied and pasted everything from Word into a different document, and I sent it to him. And I said, the good news is I am very handy at Word. He sent me an email back and said, I'm in the wrong profession. and I'm just trying to show I'm not that old. But I guess my question is, how I've seen the machines that you guys are using right now. Are those intended for student use, or are those what's intended for staff right now? And how will we make the decision for student use?
Well, the
those aren't
you're talking about the tablets.
The tablets that I've seen with some of the leaders here.
Those are right now for teacher use.
Okay.
I know that Scott's involved in the deployment of those devices, and then Joanne and the LMS team is involved in the training on the teachers on how to use the devices. And then I think the next step would be exploring with our vendors options for our student use.
Okay.
So one of the advantages in having the teachers get a chance to play around with the tablets is we're learning things all the time about struggles they might be having, or troubleshooting that we're able to do as they play around with using and getting comfortable with these tablets. And then we'll continue to look at throughout this year with our vendors what it's going to look like for what our students will have.
And I just have one other, not really a question, but I know that this takes some negotiation with our labor unions, and I see some fabulous staff back there, but seeing examples at other schools where high school students are able to also be help desk and internships, and what great opportunities for them to have that help desk kind of knowledge of troubleshooting everything. Like, Scott, you're amazing. But you know, I would like to see some opportunities for classes around that, like we saw in Bellevue, and it would just be, I think, a nice opportunity working within what our own boundaries that we have, if it's possible.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great for the students.
And I got to see that firsthand when I went down to the deployment team, and actually it was two of our student help desk people that trained me on how to image a Chromebook for the Chromebook cart. So I got to watch sort of firsthand how they prepared those high school students to be able to help an adult in being an expert in technology. So it was great.
I don't mind being shown up by somebody that's half my age or less.
No.
Other questions?
Oh, I have a couple questions, if I may. And thank you very much for the work. It's very detailed, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. When you talk about your ServiceNow organizations, there may be some, and I'm sure there are some parents who are going to be right there right now trying to get kids the software and the hardware that they need now as we progress to that stage. Will the ServiceNow be able to take a look and assist parents and students currently now on how to use their devices that may be applicable in education and curriculum learning now?
Sure. And I'm going to clarify, ServiceNow is an internal help support ticket tool. Atomic Learning, I believe, is what your report, where we can put out how to use systems, how does Windows 10 work. That's actually been available for the last few years. We've been trying to get the messaging out that that's available to our students, our staff, and our families. Their learning management software, our logins, actually they afford them an account they can custom design. So all the technology, the devices they have now at home, there's 50,000 technology tutorials in there. Anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour and a half class is their option. In addition, I'm really proud to be partners with Atomic Learning. They're offering us a community generic login so that all of our community partners, our Boys and Girls Club, our YMCAs, any of our community partners that are working with us on this initiative will get a generic login and account, and they will be able to reference and utilize this resource as well. So, and that's just a service they're providing in support of our initiative.
So ServiceNow isn't like, if kids have a problem with their devices, they can bring it in and get assistance as to what's going on now.
It's an internal help desk software that we use for ticketing, right? So that's part of the work this year, is to design that help desk structure for a student with their devices, not their home devices, because our expertise lies in what we buy and train for. There's a large variety of other devices, so we aren't their tech center, but we will be for our work.
I was just wondering for some of the parents that, bring their own devices and they want to start now and wait, because right now we're going to implement devices for Everett and Sequoia, But what about students that are at the other schools and may decide, well, I would like to, because, you know, I have a cousin who happens to be going to Everett, and they've got this device, and so my parents can purchase it for me now, and so they may want to get on the bandwagon a little bit earlier than we can deploy it at other schools. What kind of support, or are we going to provide any support for those parents and those students who happen to be able to go forward with, you know, getting devices now?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can I ask a clarifying question to make sure I understand what you're asking? Are you asking, will we
be able to help support those kids that may have the resources to purchase devices now, like, or when, you know, when we start deploying it to the other two schools, so that they can be ahead of the game, so to speak? Are we going to?
Irrespective of what schools we're deploying to, you're asking whether we will say yes to any student in the district who comes to us and wants us to set up their machine now?
Yeah.
I can give you the answer to that question.
Probably no.
No.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that much money. We'd love to,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't have that much money.
Okay, gotcha. And I see also that your facilitators that you request for budgeting isn't until 2018, 2019. Is that the same as supporting getting staff up to speed at each of the schools at the different, because I'm sure staff are going to be those facilitators to help the teachers as they do their professional development and learn different equipment and learn how to integrate those devices into their curriculum. Are those the facilitators that are going to then be deployed to each of the individual schools to support those teachers?
So in the first year, those are funded out of the capital funds. It's in our plan the year they deploy. So we're doing the pre-year, which is the work we're doing, and that is in our budget with Jeff Utech, where they have time to, before the devices come to their students, to learn and to start modifying their lessons and instructions to include more technology. In the capital levy, there's funding for the initial implementation year for an on-site instructional facilitator. Okay. The funding models we looked at were then the next year. So after the implementation, as they continue to deepen their understanding, the idea of a facilitator in the school or facilitators to assist them is for the ongoing deepening and moving from substitution to augmentation to modification.
So it isn't for the initial training, it is for the
ongoing.
The ongoing. Yep. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Director Andrews.
Related to that, the expense for the field techs, and this is after the initial implementation, the expense for the field techs actually increases over the years, and I guess in my mind you would need more help from the beginning and then it would decline. So I was just wondering what the assumptions were there.
On the field tech specifically?
Yes.
With the increasing the amounts over time?
Yes.
So because, for example, Everett High School would have a field tech on site that would remain on site the next year, and then as we add the next school, we would add another field tech. So the idea is, well, it depends on what level of support, but if you looked at support level A, it would end up continuing to add the on-site support for the schools that are getting the deployment, so they're able to keep the on-site tech support for their needs of connectivity and help with things. And then the help desk would be just adding one help desk person that would just carry forward. So there'd be one additional help desk that wouldn't increase every year, but the field tech would, the on-site person would increase.
Okay, so it matches the number of computers. Yeah, thank you.
Of the deployment.
It's really important to remember too, in the initial year or two, it's important because the person on site that will be taking care of, at Jackson High, maybe 1,300 machines. So, depending upon how many kids are Jackson. As you get to years 2 and 3 and 4, it doesn't go down. The amount of help needs go up. As the machines start getting older, they start breaking down, these kids start swapping them in, so the needs don't reduce, the needs increase as you go on and on. So having somebody at a site is critical for this to go forward.
Makes perfect sense. Thank you. Joanne, you also mentioned something about, I heard you say training elementary school teachers in the next few weeks or something.
So we are steadily, though we're not doing a take-home model, we are steadily increasing the number of computers through the course of this levy at our elementaries. So there are more and more devices. And so to train them with as many elementaries as there are, we're doing a segment over time with our substitutes. So we'll have 3 elementaries that are starting and learning how to go through the SAMR model, how to change their instruction to better utilize the Chromebooks or the other machines that are coming into their building. And we'll continue to do that so that all of our teachers K-12 will be trained over the implementation, the 4 or 5 years of the levy. As the number of computers in their schools increase, we want them to be able to leverage them and take better advantage of them. So we're providing them the training as well as we go through the model. So the secondary schools will be the year before they implement, and the elementary will be segmented out. So we have a portion of our students, our teachers being trained each year as the secondary is being trained as well.
Okay. I loved your comment too about the teachers saying they could already take what they learned even without a device and start changing or modifying teaching. Yeah.
And I'll just add that we're also setting up, so we have these cohorts set up and there's gaps in between each training. So high school is this week and then there'll be a break in the action, I think 6 weeks between the first 2 sessions. And so in between these sessions, they're going to set up some online connections. So UTEC and I think her name's Emily Roth. They are going to be setting up, continuing to touch base with the high school teachers as they're trying things in the classroom and continuing to learn in between the first 2 times they'll be together. So it'll sort of be that applied knowledge. So very exciting.
Director Mason? Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wondered if any of you sleep at night. If your wheels are turning all night long. Yeah. So it's an amazing plan. Thank you.
It is. And on that note, the complexity of it all is just amazing. A lot of moving parts to put together. And as Director Wenta said, it's going to be some trial and error along the way, but you guys have certainly done your research and background work, so thank you. I did have a question on the different funding models. When we put together a technology levy, we go out to voters and we ask for a certain amount, and we say this is for the implementation of one-to-one in our school and it's going to last 6 years. I'm assuming that the general fund impact on the current staffing model was integrated into those assumptions throughout the 6 years. Is that correct? And then my follow-up question would be, out of the A, B, C, D, which one of those were anticipated costs as we looked on the general fund, as we looked at implementing the technology over the 6 years, and which ones have we had sort of learnings about where we actually maybe missed the mark in terms of our thoughts on how much it would take to do this? I'm trying to understand, what we knew to be the case and what is new here. And I know it's a big question, but I'm just trying to get my head around the different levels and what they mean. And
certainly. I think when we talk about this as an organizational change, as a change of doing business, when we talk about capital funds, we can only do the implementation piece. So as we add 20,000 devices over 6 years, the ongoing use and maintenance of those, I think we were very clear in our capital ask. And the idea that there was always going to be a general fund implication, how we shift, there is now. We maintain everything we bought with capital funds, but it doesn't continue to be capital funded.
Right.
I look at our grade book as a great example, is we own it now. And so to maintain that, that's where some of the resources you're seeing from some of the current staffing model comes from. So there's the maintenance element of our technology, and then there's the acquisition part and the launch. And so I think we knew the implications. The professional development, I think, continues to be the variable about how do we sustain the momentum. So I think in our research and our look and what we wanted for our community, every model will move us forward. It's just the intensity or the speed. The more that we can do the professional learning, the better. And I think that becomes part of our organizational shift as with technology as kind of a new core. How does it come up against some of our other priorities? So I don't know that there would have been more to ask the public for out of the levy funds, because there's the years after when the devices are there in year 2, 3, and 4. And I think that that's what we're putting forward to now is what are those implications for how we leverage the speed and the ongoing support.
Would it be fair to say when you look at the 4 different levels that it's sort of how we look at the budget, the best case scenario, worst case scenario, and a lot of the implications are what the legislator is going to do and sort of how robust we want to make?
What my boss
I think that's what I kind of shared before at the beginning of the budget slides, was that it's just hard. This is sort of like, this is our draft at the beginning of October with a lot of unknowns. And so we understand there's a lot of unknowns and unpredictable parts and lots of parts of this organization. And so this is sort of our best guess at this point based on levels of support, understanding that the shifting sands of how we are funded. And so this is what it could look like depending on what that looks like.
We're going to know so much more in 5 years.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And then, okay, shifting gears here just a little bit away from the funding. When I looked at through some of the community outreach, one thing that wasn't mentioned a lot was parents and parent involvement, with the understanding that a lot of these students are going to be bringing the first device a family has ever had home. And there's certainly going to need to be some outreach or bringing them in. And has that been addressed? I just didn't see it so much.
Well, and I think so. You mentioned about bringing them in, and I think we have talked about we need to go to them. There's a lot in terms of outreach to parents and parent support about that's that community outreach and the parent partnership part, about finding locations and places we can go to in the neighborhoods and where they're at in terms of being a resource to them and a support to them. So our plan, in fact, we have talked about is how to reach out to parts of our district and our parent groups about how can we best meet your needs and where can we go to meet with you. That idea of the outreach portion to be a support rather than having sort of, tech talk meetings at the district office and, and please come in for the training. So, and we're excited about that idea. But also as part of that, not only helping with the device, but what are your needs? Are there some hotspot areas that would be useful in your area that idea of access and equitability, we could get the input from these parent groups, not only in understanding the tablet and the device, but also how can we help you to better connect to these resources. So that's our thought moving forward.
And again, to Director Mitchell's point, I could easily see high school students being involved in those kind of endeavors. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
As far as hotspots, places.
Locations.
Are we also including partners with different entities within the community as far as establishing hotspot locations so that Wi-Fi is available for those families that may not have that capability?
Right. Yes, that we talked about that today, about partnering with our different groups. We have our equity and access groups and some of our community agencies about where would those locations be, and then partnering once we know where good spots would be, what would be some business partnerships we could use to help provide that. So that is something we talked about is part of our plan. It's a great idea.
So my question, I a line item for $70,000 for analytics, which I think is great. And much like a bond, a capital bond, when we look at really putting a lot of time and attention to show that our projects, where they are in the queue, so we can communicate back to voters. Can you talk a little bit about the analytics that we will be able to provide our voters to show the growth of this plan?
So the line item you're talking about is our Insight product, which is we currently use instructionally. So it's a capital eligible subscription that we use for our teacher and staff to have a very dynamic interface with student data of all kinds. We have support in-house who helps design those views and customize them. I think your question is more about the analytics of this initiative.
Yes.
Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Right. So I'm going to.
So in terms of sharing the sort of the progress of the plan?
Yeah.
Right.
And so, for example, because I'm already thinking of the next technology levy.
Right.
And I think in many cases, because of this, we have to prove our work the first time. And so what are the high-level analytics that we can share, KPIs that we can share with the public as this, adoption rates, access to atomic learning, the utilization rates. Because I think that will help form and shape how the community adopts technology. And so I wasn't sure if there was any conversation around that or not.
Yes, and we have talked about sort of what, well, for the whole organization, there's a lot to celebrate in Everett Public Schools. So as we get ready for the next time we are before voters, there are lots of parts, including the progress on this bond and levy and the integrated tech plan. And so that sort of data dashboard idea of promoting it everywhere on our website, in our buildings, sharing it with the community as much as we can about the progress and and what's to celebrate. And I think as they start to see especially next year as devices start to roll out, I think there's going to be some tangible proof, but constantly updating them through any means possible with our communication department here and in different ways of getting the message out. One of the things you heard early on was sort of the network of districts that have already undergone the one-to-one initiative, and I have found it fascinating as I reach out to them as they have shared the mistakes they've made, and that is been a real learning experience for us. And one of the things I've asked for their input is, how did you keep the sort of progress out with your voters, with your constituents? So when you go back and ask for some additional technology monies, you're able to justify that you were good stewards of the money that they already approved. And so that's going to be constantly part of what we have as part of our plan, and the community outreach is updating them regularly.
Yeah, I think it's important to show some very high-level KPIs to the community, no different than we would show for where we are on some of our fiscal projects, so people have an understanding of that.
Sure. I have one last question when you're done.
Okay. And then, so if I go to slide 9, the slide where it talks about taking a village, there appears to be probably 80 to 90% district staff who have informed this plan, which is wonderful and great. But the community aspect appears to be a bit thin. And as we look at rolling this out in a more robust way and getting community feedback, how are we going to go about hearing from more constituents?
And I know that our technology advisory council, that is, we're trying, reaching out to get more parent and community involvement in our TAC committee, which is sort of continuing to look and refine this plan. And that's one avenue of trying to increase the ratio so we have more parent and community groups. I think a lot of it, and this is part of my job, is to go out in the community and find these to have outreach as part of my own goals with this position. And that is going to be something that we'll be able to add more of the business input, the community input, the parent input, to have more representation on our committee, and it's sort of informing the plan, which then again speaks to your other question about involvement and awareness of the rollout and the success of it. It's all going to be connected, and so that's going to be something that I work on, is a focus on trying to increase that membership and involvement.
And I think as we talked a little bit before about that outreach of going out and preparing the families for these devices, getting them in their hands, as we look in the hotspots and where we can place hotspots in the community, take advantage, we are going to get a bundle of, we're not going to get input, we're going to get people really involved. So that outreach will be kind of really organic as we begin to prepare the community, talk to the community, and go out to the community. So I think there'll be more than we've had ever before involvement and feedback from the community about how this process goes, especially with these first rounds at every high school in Sequoia.
Yeah, and again, I go back to my original statement. You know, we're going to be 80 to 90% baked, which is fantastic. And how do we minimize that 10%? That's really the nature of my question. So, Director Mitchell.
Yes. Well, I received an email this afternoon, which is quite timely, from a student at Jackson asking me. He is in Programming 3, which is far above my ability, way above my ability. But they took a class right at the beginning of the school year, which you might be aware of, Brian, yes, for programming, MIT, Stanford, but we don't have the ability, he doesn't have the access to complete the assignments. And so if we're offering the classes, are we able to fully offer all the support for these classes? Or what is being done if I'm answering the question?
Let's amend
Thank you.
Let's amend your question a teeny bit, because you don't know actually what they're requiring and what he's got access to.
Yes.
The question really is about, and what's embedded in that particular email that you forwarded on to us a few minutes ago, was this notion of gaining access to YouTube and some of the other sites that we have locked down because they permit pornography to come into the schools too easily. And this is a conversation that we had in the summer, and I know it's a conversation you've got going. So the director's question is particularly timely. Where are we in the discussion about how we adjust the filtering? And I do not want to say relax, or I do not want to say release, but adjust the filtering so that students who need access to specific sites can get it, and we maintain higher levels of restriction for example, younger students or students who don't need the access. Very complex question.
It is, and we too received the email from the student that you're talking about, and that's a conversation we've had almost on a daily basis, is about the filtering and about what students would gain access to, what they need access to. There are ways that we can work with that to make sure the students have what they need. In this particular case, we were able to work with a lot of it is information from the teachers about what is it that they need access to, and then we work on our end about creating access for those groups of kids that need the access.
Well, and I think that where I used to work, they could release it per my computer name.
Right.
And so that way it's not getting broadcast everywhere. My
Right.
computer name, I had access to
Correct.
it. So can we do that same sort
Right.
of thing here? So you could limit it to the computer labs at schools, or at certain
Or-
schools, or
or-
certain computers on certain schools.
For the particular student's login,
Okay.
it could be assigned.
So it can be that minute. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
It's a good question, though. I mean, that will continue to be an issue that we will continue to work with. And right when we figure out a filtering that works, they will figure out a way around that filter, and then we'll have. It's just going to be. It's going to be a constant issue that Ken will solve.
Yes. You know, we haven't heard questions from our student representatives, and we want to make sure that you have time to ask questions as you look at this and get your initial thoughts and reactions.
I'll go first. So I'd say thank you for taking all this complex information and putting it into a plan that's so easy for everyone, especially the students, to understand. But I do have a couple questions. So the teachers, I know for Everett High at least, and Sequoia, these past 2 days have come here to the CRC to learn about how to use the computers.
Mhm.
But you previously mentioned that the students might get different computers as well, not the ones the teachers have. So will the teachers will they be able to have a course or something so they learn to use the tech that the students have? Because I know that it's different, and lots of programs, for instance, right now, we have Chromebooks available for some classes, and teachers can use one website, but students can't, or just different programs. So will the teachers also learn how to use the technology the students are using as well? Yes.
So there's two different PD, professional development, that's occurred. So the teachers, in fact, a lot of it is going to happen this Friday. When the teachers receive their tablet, they receive professional development on how to use that device. So the training that's been happening at the CRC this week is not necessarily, well, some of it's about using the device, but it's more about teaching differently using technology. And so no matter the device and what that is, they are learning how they can use technology so that whatever device the students have, they are able to fully utilize that with the students and how they teach. So yes, whatever the device is, and that's part of the facilitator's role as well, is that the teachers are going to know that the device that the students have is one that they will know how to use. More importantly, not just turning it on. Again, it's not just about the device. It's how do I utilize this so it's not just a substitute for a pencil, but I'm using it to augment and, higher up on the SAMR model, really fully utilizing technology. So there's really two different things happening for teachers. So every teacher in the district, when they got the tablet, was taught how to use the tablet and then given the year to sort of play around with use of that device. The teachers that are involved in the first rollout, like at Everett High School in Sequoia, it's okay, now how can I utilize technology?
I also have another question. So I know by talking to students at Everett High so far, a lot of students, what they're expecting for next year, they're expecting to stop using pencil and paper and just computer. So what could be a way to sort of tell the students that it's sort of another way of teaching and not just computer by itself?
Well, that's good information to have us hear from what students are saying, because that is going to be part of the work we have with the teachers, as we're having right now, about how they communicate with the students about what it's going to look like and what they're going to use that tool for. And it's going to be messy at the beginning, but it's very exciting, and I think that the teachers' comfort with how they see using the device and the technology is going to be the key here. So we're really focusing on professional development for the teachers and how they communicate with the students about what they're going to use technology for. It's good information.
Sure. So in some of my classes this year, we're using the Google Classroom environment to kind of streamline calendar, assignments, etc. And so I was wondering, when the take-home devices are rolled out, how are we going to streamline on the software side the essentially the teacher websites, calendars, to kind of improve the experience for students who on the doing homework, etc.
Using the Google Classroom, or just sort of in general?
In general, is there something specific like that we've selected, or?
Not at this point. We're sort of using the Google platform with some of our devices, but also the Office 365, and we have teachers operating in both. Yeah.
We're in the process of, and we'll be involving teachers and students throughout this year. We've done the initial resource for a course management system. So an environment, not a Google Classroom, but we're looking for the environment that can plug in all the digital tools into a course management structure. So, colleges are utilizing several different platforms. So we're doing initial investigation, but we're about to launch into involving our teachers and our students and looking at a couple different platforms and making a selection. So that's actually in the plan, to have that environment that's consistently offered in all our classrooms.
Good question, though.
So this is a draft plan that is coming before us. And it's my understanding that if we have a plan, we're not necessarily approving a plan because then we'd have to approve every single change to the plan. Can you talk a little bit about how we'll be kind of informed on the implementation of the plan and what that will look like? It's supposed to come to us again in the spring?
I'm looking. I recall that. I'm looking for the date.
Okay.
I think it's June 5th.
Okay. And maybe we may want a periodic update
Yeah.
before June.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And we are meeting with the TAC committee next week to share the current draft. So we took the input from the board. We took the input from really focusing on that outreach goal we added. And so we made those edits. And so we're going to share that with them next Tuesday. And so that's why we hadn't had a chance to vet it one more time with that group before we took the draft off the plan. So certainly updating you on the progress and feedback from the committee and just updates along the way.
Yeah, I think we may want an update that's a little bit sooner, just
Okay.
because this was such a major initiative that I think we're really excited about.
Yeah, we are too.
It can be doesn't have to be this in depth.
No.
Just quick, what's changed, what's up.
Okay.
A question. Well, what's reasonable? I mean, 4 months?
Sure.
February?
Yeah.
You have one meeting in February. You want to do it in that meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you just talk a little bit about the reception by our teaching staff?
Yes.
There's probably some early adopters, some late adopters, and everything in between, and just kind of what's the tone and feel?
Well, yeah, I think you hit it on the head that they're sort of all over the spectrum. I can tell you from the teachers that are here for the training, there is engaged excitement. They're learning and the possibilities of being able to use this in their classroom. I think it's been a great tool. Joanne and Scott, they're the ones involved in handing the devices over and the training of them on the use of device. I think they've gotten a lot of feedback and emails and excitement from people that might have been apprehensive before receiving the tablet and the training, but then very excited and very appreciative after they leave. I don't know if you guys want to share anything more
You're
specific.
at the tip of the sword.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very, very excited.
Yeah.
Very, very, very excited.
And I think that there might be some that are nervous about it, but Scott and Joanne do such a great job of helping them with sort of first steps. And I think it's exciting because they're getting a chance to use the tablet for a year before we are expecting them to use it in the classroom.
Yes.
And I think that's been a real great, it's sort of taken the anxiety, I think, off a little bit for them, and they've learned a lot through trial and error about connecting and use of the tablet.
Any other questions?
I have one more question, and maybe this question, Brian, is not for you, but maybe more for Dr. Stewart and Dr. Scott. But it goes back to Amy's question as far as what the students believe. My question is about what the staff believes. And the concern is as we become more and more digital, there may be the philosophy that, well, kids won't have to use pencil and paper anymore. But my question is, we will still have the need for kids learning to write and learning to perhaps write cursive. I know there's lots of philosophies out there that cursive is no longer necessary because kids are printing and kids are typing, but there are that philosophy that writing in the cursive style is still very important and that we still have to learn to write. My question is, how do we incorporate bringing technology into play and that you don't have to print, but writing is still very valuable, cursive writing is still very valuable?
So I was just going to share, when we're training in technology, we're not training and using a tool at all times. They're training in blended learning. When is it time to be on the device? When is it time to be in person? When is it time to write? From the beginning, the teachers are learning how do we build a culture which technology is leveraged it's not taking over. And so those other skill sets, as we continue to define and redefine what our society wants us to prepare our students for, are not limited to a computer keyboard. And so that is definitively in our training, the blended learning idea of how do we enhance with media good instruction.
I think you can see by the questions, I mean, we anticipated that this would be a very informative discussion. So thank you so much. This has been great. And I know that as we go out to the community and share this is good news. This is fantastic. And I think it was Director saying, this is a game changer for our community, and what this can mean is huge. I want to defer the rest of my time to you for celebrations, because I think we have some in line.
I'll have Mr. Jenkins come up.
We hear a lot about college and career readiness, and that's critical. And I remember sitting with Carl Fender, we talked about college readiness years ago, but now we talk about college and career and how vital that is. Since 2004, this young lady who's probably in the back, this young lady and I have worked with students during summers when we've had major rollouts, and they have been invaluable to helping us get things ready. In fact, it was another team that Patty Ann worked with that gave the ability for staff to leave Longfellow and the service center on a Friday night and come back to the CRC on a Monday morning, because that team and this young lady worked all weekend making sure their computers were connected. So they've helped us beyond what we've ever expected. And kind of under the table, some of these young men and women have gone on to work at Microsoft and Amazon and other places. And it's a lot of the skills that she has worked with them on. Patty Ann embodies what a teacher is that doesn't have a certificate. It's everybody in the organization teaching and learning. And she was given a task, and we've worked together so long, she's the other half of my brain. She knows what I'm going to think.
Unfortunately.
There's good and bad to that. I was really nervous because I gave her a task this summer that was nearly impossible. We hired a great group that I'll introduce in a second, and I said, you kind of have 6 weeks to get 1,500 tablets ready. And as she was kind of freaking out, I said, with an entirely new system that you've never used before, that we're implementing because due to the devices, we can't use the old system anymore. And then I kind of ran, but came back, and she did it. I mean, these guys did an amazing job. And above all, not only did they get the devices ready, but midway through August, I came back to her, slinked back, and I said, the LMS team has gone over their training, and there's not enough time for the teachers to unbox everything and put them together, because that would take most time. So can you guys now unbox all of the additional peripherals and put them in the bag together for them and get them ready? And then I ran out. But they did that too. I mean, they just did an amazing job. And I think what Patty Ann and this team does this summer embodies what Everett Public School students are. I mean, they represent every school. All three traditional in Sequoia. They went through an interview process just like any employer would. She is very hard, demanding. They come to work every day. They have fun, and it's just an amazing group. So I really wanted you to meet this group and just to see and hear what they did. And they're the reason that we're talking for the last hour about changing technology and teaching in Everett. They wouldn't have the devices if it wasn't for this group.
And those are all students?
These are students.
Except for,
Well,
I must say,
student at
there's
one
nine team members, and we counted up. They did the work of deploying 1,500 tablets ready out the door swagged in 35.5 days. That's all the time they spent on it.
Any of girls?
Yes, we do.
So instead of me introducing, because I know we've gone over our time, so instead of really me introducing, would you just kind of walk up, introduce yourself, and the school you're from?
My name's Allegra. I'm from Sequoia.
My name is Marie, and I'm from Cascade.
She just got out of driver's ed.
My name is Forrest, and I'm from Sequoia.
He was in driver's ed too.
My name's Carmen, and I'm from Cascade.
My name is Simran, and I just graduated from Cascade.
My name is Connor, and I just graduated from Jackson High School.
So as with every team.
And my two adults.
Oh, and the two adults, yes.
Lisa Hager and Adrian Torres.
Who are both parent volunteers in the district and work with us. Amazing. We have quality control experts.
Yes.
We have someone who kind of puts the team together and keeps them working. We have the business mind who kind of thinking of the overall plan. And we have the Energizer bunnies who keep everything going, and the team works together as an intricate team.
There are 3 people missing. They're all from Everett High, though. They weren't able to have other jobs, so they weren't here tonight.
So is what I wanted just to end with is, we talk about the skills to prepare kids for college and careers. Not only did they develop, and they had technical skills already, but they developed just a ton of soft skills. And these soft skills are working together as a team, change, adaptability, responding to challenges, working with adults coming down. The new CIO, how did I teach him to do stuff? I mean, there's not an adult who hasn't talked to these kids and thought that they were adults working for us. So I am just in awe of Patty Ann and what these guys have done this summer. So.
I think we want to get a photo op with our deployment team. I think this is huge. This is absolutely huge, and we want to get a photo. So
We like pictures.
Okay.
You were part of the front end of it. They're there.
You gotta get inside. Tighter, tighter, tighter.
Oh, jeez.
Are we all in?
So with that report, it's 6:12 right now, and the board will recess for 10 minutes. And so we'll regather at 6:25. No unfinished business, and we have no unfinished business for this evening. Will bring us down to Larry in section 13.0, new business. This is a first reading for policy 1240, duties of individual board members. Larry.
Well, good evening. I would like to present the board a proposed revision to policy 1240, duties of individual board members. Recent legislative revisions to RCW 7316041 that concerns the leaves of absence of elective and judicial officers, and to RCW 28A 343390, which defines a quorum of the board of directors, absences and vacancies, have precipitated the WASDA priority level update to this policy. This policy update has drafted language regarding the granting of leave to board members serving in active or training military duty. For purposes of our existing school board policy, it identifies circumstances for which the majority of the board shall grant an individual board member temporary leave for instances of illness or active or training military duty, as authorized by resolution of the board. The proposed policy revision does not change the existing policy's definition of an unexcused absence, nor change the authority of the board to determine a board position vacant after 4 unexcused absences. The proposed revision also makes clear that a temporary leave granted by the majority of the board may not extend a board member's term, and that the board has the authority to appoint a temporary successor to the absent member's position until they return or until the end of the board member's term. The revised policy for the board's consideration has been reviewed by both the superintendent's cabinet and legal counsel prior to inclusion on tonight's board meeting agenda.
Thank you, Larry. And the last time this was revised was in March of 2003, so it was probably due for an update. Are there any questions for Larry?
I don't have any questions, but I do thank you very much for putting in the opportunity of those serving our country and the ramifications of that. Thank you so very much.
All right. Then under general consent, we will move this to the next regular board meeting under the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it. We're now at section 14.0, upcoming agenda items. Dr. Cones, what do we have scheduled?
Actually, we had another.
Yeah, oh, thank you.
Yes.
I stand corrected. We do
Probably
have
should have reminded you to refresh. Yes. Yes. So item 13.2 is, might try refreshing. Let's make sure it shows up on. Everybody have this 13.2?
I do.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
So I've entitled this approval to waive attorney-client privilege for the Kaiser report. From time to time, we will receive information about a circumstance involving a staff member or student, and we will call on our risk management pool to make a determination as to whether they're going to extend what's typically called a pre-loss claim or in advance, essentially an approval to do some investigating. They will assign counsel. Counsel will typically identify an investigator. In this case, Mr. Kaiser investigated some claims that were embedded within an email that came in as part of some communications. And when it was reviewed by us in council, we made a determination that we ought to investigate what was being claimed sort of lower down in the body of an email. So that was done. As a result of the process, council has suggested that in order to close the conversation and the claims with the parent, that the board waive privilege for this report, which was created as attorney work product, and that we sit down with the parent and go through all of the evidence that we've collected. I'm supportive of it. We don't do this very often. Upon occasion, it's important to do. It doesn't obligate you further, but it does, when you waive this sort of privilege, you waive the privilege surrounding that particular activity. So I'm going to ask you to approve this request to waive privilege with respect to this work product and report. And I will correct the hastily done punctuation on this thing too.
Okay. Do you have any questions for Dr. Cohn?
When we waive privilege, can it be specific to the parent, or does it become open?
No.
Public record?
Yes.
Any other questions?
A long, involved answer. It's, yeah. Anybody may access it then.
So the recommended action is that the Board of Directors authorizes waiver of the board's work product privilege applicable to investigator Rick Kaiser's October 11, 2016 report. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Mason and seconded by Director Lassane to approve the recommended action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're at section 14.0, upcoming agenda items.
Thank you very much. Item number 14.1 identifies a special meeting to be held on October 18. It is an early learning update, and this meeting is going to be held at Garfield Elementary. It is an afternoon meeting, 4:30 to, let's call it 6:30, maybe 6 o'clock, depending on how long it runs. I think you're going to be delighted, and you will see a lot of the information that you asked for during your summer workshop. So that, I'm very much looking forward to this, and so is Cynthia and her team and the folks at Garfield. Item 14.2 is your regular school board meeting on October 25. We expect to present to you 2 strategic progress monitoring items, our summer school progress toward graduation and our summer school reading program, our summer reading program, not just summer school, summer reading program. And then you'll have a second reading on the policy you just read on first reading. You'll receive a fiscal outlook from Mr. Moore. And then we expect to bring you library and instructional materials, surplus items, and a gift from our Public Schools Foundation, which, as I recall, is related to the playground work.
Thank you. We're now at section 15.0, the board superintendent comments and board meeting evaluation. Who would like to get us started?
I'll say something. I just want to reiterate how it's been quite a journey with the technology plan. It's something that started many, many years ago. The idea, when I first came on the board almost 3 years ago, the idea of moving to a one-to-one and the studying, the input, it's just been ongoing, robust, and it's just very exciting tonight to sit here and look at now the net rollout. I mean, where essentially it's happening. And there's just so many people to thank. It's difficult to give a personal thanks to everyone, but really, I know everyone in this room has been involved in with it. So thank you to all of you.
Do you have anything?
Well, I also want to say thank you for the presentation, because although I won't have the computers next year myself, it's just really interesting to see what everyone else is.
We gave you one.
Oh, I mean,
You've got
besides this one. I mean, it won't be the same as having it in class all day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I know high school and beyond night is next Wednesday, but also next Wednesday is the Buff Puff Games at Everett High, where the guys play volleyball and the girls play football, and I'm on the football team. So if anyone wants to stop by.
What time?
Oh, I think it's at 7, but I have to make sure. I'm not sure yet.
I think it's at 7, I can tell you.
Yeah.
Son's on the other team.
Football.
Yeah, so.
One head-to-head with you, Amy.
Oh. Yeah, so if you guys will like to stop by, that'd be very fun to see all of you there.
What time? 7 o'clock? Okay.
I think so.
That would be after Garfield.
Yes.
Get it on our
There's a late
calendars.
start that morning, too. You get to sleep
Put
in.
it on our calendars.
I
Starts
think
at 7.
7? Would that be the boys first or the girls? Because I know girls are in Lincoln Field.
What's that?
Girls are in Lincoln Field, but I
Oh.
think it's after boys. I'm not sure yet.
Oh, I don't know.
I hope to see
Sorry.
everyone there.
Ruvik?
Sure. So, since I was in elementary school, I always kind of like wanted to have, one-to-one computers at school, especially because in some of the other school districts in our area, some of my friends had them. And so, but for them, it was kind of just like thrown out there. It wasn't really planned out. So I'm glad to see that we're doing it, in a systematic way to make sure that everything is worked out before we introduce it to the students. And so although I won't be there for the eventual rollout, I'm excited to work with it.
Sorry, guys.
Oh, it's a long time coming, and it's so true what Director Mason mentioned as far as the work, the hard work, and the desire to make this happen, and I am so glad it's here. I really am. It's time.
Well, I have a couple reports for my legislative activities and my Ed Leader 21. September was a busy month. Went to the WASDA Legislative Assembly, which is for our guests and students, or our staff and students. Just to give a little bit of background, there are 279 districts in the state. 295 districts in the state. About 80, almost 90 districts showed up this year. We come together, have a couple sessions about what's happening in education. We're able to hear the superintendent of public education applicants speak and ask questions of them. But the main purpose of us, which this is my second year going, and I finally understood the purpose, that they have about 150 different positions that get voted on or modified every year. And the reason they have these positions is when WASDA goes to Olympia or to Washington, D.C., and a legislature, a congressperson says, well, how does the Washington State School Boards feel about something? They know how we feel about it. So there is a little bit of discussion that goes on with some of these. So I wanted to give you some highlights, some very brief highlights. One of them is a position called Common Core Funding, and we actually voted to change it to the Washington State Learning Standards Funding, because it's more than Common Core, it's really the Washington State standards. So that was a simple little change. They also have a process. Everybody's given green cards if you agree with the position statement, or a red card if you don't agree. And if the chair cannot tell if there's how many greens or reds there are for a clear win or loss, he asks for a standing vote, and then they do a head count. But anybody on the floor can ask for a weighted vote. And every district is given pieces of paper with a number of votes. Everett gets 7 for our size. Seattle gets in the high teens for their size. And the district next to me from we're in Snohomish County, she got 2 for her size and was very jealous of my 7. So that plays into a couple of my statements. It was brought up that students should be able to take alternative assessments for high school graduation requirements and accountability. And it was a raised vote. Then somebody called for a weighted vote, and it passed 202 to 147. So even though there's only 80-ish board members there, that's the number of votes that they have, which means that if somebody asks, does WASDA support Smarter Balance as the state test, WASDA says no, we support students being able to take the SAT, the ACT. But thank goodness for our session last week that the SAT and the ACT have not been vetted yet by the state to say that they are equal to the SBA. But that was one point, and bigger districts in the state prevailed. The other one that is sort of my buddy that we were there together from another district in Snohomish County, students having a Bill of Rights for state assessments. And we know that students can currently opt out of state assessments by a vote of 73 to 244. It was voted in favor by that kind of majority that students should have a student assessment Bill of Rights. And then we did talk about bargaining. There was one thing that was health care. So we supported statewide bargaining of health care, and then we also supported statewide bargaining of salaries. That was also a weighted vote of 170 versus 109, so still a pretty high majority. But otherwise, it's really exciting how how the dialogue happens at these things and how people are vested in their thing. And then also when the two things about assessments are pretty high up on the agenda, and then the districts with the most votes leave and catch a flight home from Spokane early, one knows what their priorities are without naming those districts. But I stayed till the end, and then we also rank our top 10. And then WASDA comes out with everybody's ranks of what WASDA's top 10 are. Somehow they make it 3, they send it to us, and that becomes our plan. Then Ed Leader, does anybody have a question? We've been through the process before. I just had some good information this time that was kind of exciting. Then Ed Leader 21. I went with Becky and Larry and Kathy and Dana and Kathy Stillwell and Dana and Andy. Yes. And we had a great time. We all did different things, but my favorite thing that I have to tell you about, and I gave all of my swag to Dana, is a CTE school on steroids. And it was just phenomenal. And they have a North Campus, which is their health sciences campus. And it's not on our NSBA agenda for a school tour, but I wonder if there might not be an opportunity for maybe some of us when we're at NSBA to go out and see their North Campus, because it's a health sciences campus. They give MA programs, they have dental hygiene, dental assistant programs, EMT, and everything. So that wasn't at the campus I was at, but it was at their other campus. So I just thought there might be an opportunity, since we're going back to December and March, since that's a plan of ours. But a really, really, really good meeting. I think a really, really great organization that's really trying to, you have all been. Everybody said, oh, that's great that Everett sends their board members. And I said, I'm the last one. So yes, we do. But I think it was great. And I think Becky learned a lot. I think everybody learned a lot, and Larry did too. So thank you for sending me.
And thank you for your service. Absolutely. Dr. Cohn?
No, nothing else. Thank you.
My comments certainly did all around the technology plan. It's fun to see a heavy lift like that come to fruition. But I want to just compliment the district administrative staff for two pretty significant safety concerns: the creepy clowns and the shutdown of the schools. Those are logistically challenging, to say the least. They are disruptors, and yet I think, and we can always learn from that, but just a great response in just showing our parents that we take this stuff very seriously, that this is not a district that's going to mess around with this, and there is a safety and confidence by the parents knowing that. So thank you for that disruption and how you responded, because I think it's something that we can be proud of. So with that, we're now at section 16.0. We have no executive session scheduled for this evening, so we are now at 17.0. This concludes the scheduled meeting before the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors on October 11th, 2016. We are adjourned. Mr. Moore.